What's going on, y'all? This is Mr. Triple H himself, aka His Healthy Habits, and today I'm coming to you with an honest review of the Best of Me tour by Stephan Speaks.
Unfortunately, in today's dating world, a lot of people are not being themselves. A lot of people are trying to present their representative, hoping to get a favorable outcome. And we're all shooting ourselves in the foot, those who engage in that behavior. Because what you really need to be doing is finding out who you are, standing strong in that, and waiting for the person who embraces the real you. If you get with someone trying to put on an act and a show, you are going to end up being miserable later, even if you get that. Plenty of people have gotten exactly what they wanted. There have been men who went all in, spending all kinds of money to get a woman, only to finally wake up from the fog and realize this is a bunch of crap. And she's mistreating me, and she doesn't do anything for me. There's been women doing all this extra stuff, hoping they can make this man get to that place that you believe he can be. And he never gets there. Or he gets there, leaves you and gets to somebody else. Because you were just a stepping stool in his life. He was never truly into you. But again, you were not coming with who you really were, because if you're only pouring into that individual, then you're not being truthful about what you need in that relationship. So you're falsely representing what's going to be required of these individuals. And yes, there are plenty of people who will take advantage of that. So we've got to get comfortable with who we are and show up as that person. And then let the chips fall where they lay.
So just kind of giving y'all a little bit of background on how I found out about Stephan Speaks. I really hadn't heard much about him until I got on social media, and he was actually recommended as one of the pages that I should follow. So kind of after checking out his profile on Instagram, seeing the videos, the memes, and then, his interviews, I liked the information he was giving from the emotional and personal development side of, developing those healthy habits. And not just for men, it was for men and women. And I actually think he has a bigger following, for women, honestly, than men. So after following him, for several weeks, I really started to pick up a lot on his advice, his tips, for emotional development, personal development, mental development, psychological development, which are, align with what I'm trying to promote from the healthy habits side. So I saw that he had a tour. He was coming to my city, which is Houston. So I was like, why not just drop in, check it out, see what it's like, so I can give you that honest review and actually give you an inside look on what the tour looked like and what, basically Stephan was giving. So if you're interested, I actually think you really should check it out for yourself. I'm not going to give I'm not going to basically show everything from the tour, but I am going to show bits and pieces of what I think will interest you, and hopefully if he's in your city, you'll decide to go and check him out. If not, I know he is on the social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, so make sure to find him, and I'll put his Instagram handle here too, so you can make sure you check him out. And again, I just want to thank Stephan for creating this event and this tour. Man, it was definitely dope. Great information, very unbiased, very transparent. Just with being from the male perspective, it was interesting to hear some of the things he talked about that may have not been always talked about, on a mainstream platform. And he was a very down to earth dude, very relatable, which I really liked. And he didn't sugarcoat anything. And we did a Q&A directly, after he did a Q&A after he basically spoke, and he did a live Q&A at that, and took questions from people in the crowd who came, and he answered every single question pretty much. I ain't gonna lie, to me, with poise and almost damn near perfection, when it came to having an unbiased perspective on the outlook or how you should look at certain things, when it comes to those habits, emotional, personal, psychological, and any other thing that he touched on, at the event.
So please stand to your feet for the author, entrepreneur, my mentor, my guide, my brother, Mr. Stephan Speaks.
Thank you for coming out tonight for the Best in Me tour. For those who don't know who I am, just a quick recap. My name is Stephan Speaks, aka Stephan Speaks. As he mentioned, author, speaker, coach, been doing this for over 12 years. And I'm all about helping you experience better overall quality of life, heal from your past, and just better dating and relationships. So, I put this tour together because I'm not really a big fan of everything being online nowadays. And I wanted to be able to see you guys in person and connect. I feel like there's a different energy when you get to see people and touch them in person, all right? So we're gonna talk about a lot of different things today, but I also realize that I don't give a lot of information about myself online. I'm kind of mysterious in that way. So I figured let me give you guys a little bit more background today. So I grew up in a family, 3 sisters, one being my twin sister. I always get an O or an R whenever I say a twin sister, every single time, every single. All right? I come from a Haitian background. Both my parents are Haitian, so I grew up in a Caribbean household. And growing up, it was a very strict household. It wasn't really about emotions and love and all that sweet stuff. It was discipline, respect, make something of yourself, and the story. And so, growing up, just to give you an idea of how my mind worked, I remember in, elementary school, at the end when we graduated, at that time I used to get A's and B's in school, right? And I went to the teacher and I said, well, what happens to my grades after we go to the next level? She said, what do you mean they're gone? You start all over in junior high. And I said, so wait a minute, I did all this work for nothing. And for it not to count at all on the next level? All right, so at that point I decided I would only work hard enough to pass. So I was always a very smart kid. I could pass all those standardized tests with flying colors, but I would not do any work. And so I things moved along, went to high school, I was in all those special programs, IB program, honors program, you name it. I dropped out of all of them, all right? Because again, I hated school, hated it. Even to the point where I graduated late from high school because I didn't turn in papers on time. Now mind you, I'm an author with over 10 books. And I failed school because I didn't want to write papers. So I get to college, I still made it to college, thankfully, right? Get to college, and I started off as an accounting major. Because my family was like, you're good at math, blah, 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 you gotta get one of those high-paying jobs, go be an accountant. All right, cool. So I was a part of the National Association of Black Accountants, and we went to one of the big 6 accounting firms. And I'll never forget, during a presentation, one of the accountants said, during tax season, he has no life. He can't be there with his kids. He can't be there for those special moments. And at that moment, I said, I can't do this. So I decided, okay, I have to switch to something else. But I didn't want to lose all my credits, so I switched to MIS, Management Information Systems. So my degree is in IT. But like a lot of people, you graduate and never use the damn degree. Right? So I graduated. I'm a manager at a call center. I get into real estate investment. At one point, I have like 15 properties. This is before the bubble burst. Got 15 properties. I'm living it up. I'm a wild guy, having parties, promoting clubs, doing it all in Miami, Florida. And then one day, I won't say one day. One day God just slapped me upside the head. And everything changed from that day forth. And I kind of underwent this whole spiritual process, dreams, all kinds of spiritual occurrences. I got so many stories, I can't even go through all of them tonight. And eventually that led to me, during that process of me trying to figure some things out, I ended up becoming a teacher at a charter school for 6 months. All right. Listen, I was the worst teacher ever. Trust me, don't send your kids my way, they won't learn a damn thing. I was horrible. I hated lesson plans, I hated all that stuff, okay? But one day at work, I went to sleep in my car during lunch. And I just woke up and just remember hearing very clearly God said it's time to move to Georgia. And so I didn't want to leave Miami. I had all my friends there. I did have family in Georgia, but I did not want to go there. But I felt God was, pushing me, so I finally left. And then when I got to Georgia, I was surrounded by married couples. And they were all coming to me for advice. Now, I'm a single guy, but everybody was coming to me for advice. And that gave birth to my first ever book, which was How to Get a Woman to Have Sex with You If You're Her Husband. And y'all are going to judge me. Exactly. Chill out. So, the reason being is because I was hearing so many complaints from the men about a lack of sex, and the women saying, well, why don't they know what they should do? Why do I have to tell them? So I figured let me fill in the gap and write this book. But it was also through God's guidance, because I would have never done it if not God pushing me to do it. Long story short, I just kept asking God, what do I do next? What do I do next? And I just kept following every single step, and it's led me to here. And throughout that process, I let it be known, you may see me successful now, but I struggled a lot. I went through like 4 years of doing this dead broke. People telling me, get a real job. What are you doing? This is a waste of time. Only to end up more successful than them. Don't expect for other people to embrace where God's trying to lead you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of finding your purpose and living out your best life, there are going to be people who don't understand where you're going and why you're doing these things and will think you're crazy and all this different stuff. But do not let the outside noise distract you. We have to understand, and this is especially true for anyone who's an entrepreneur in here. We get caught up in wanting our family and friends to support us, not realizing those are the last people who will support us. All right? And it's designed that way because those people know the old you. They don't know who you're becoming. They know the last 10 times you said I was going to try this and it failed. They don't know that this time it's the one. So you can't expect them to get it. Focus on doing what you need to do and you will receive what you're supposed to receive.
That boy is good.
Good.
So, before I move on to some of these other topics, let me also say this. One of the reasons why I think it's very important for everyone to try to get more in tune spiritually and find not just who you are, but find your purpose is because it might be on that path that you discover who's for you. And even if you don't find that partner, it's on that path that you will find your happiness and your peace. All right? A lot of times we're struggling in life because we're fighting who we are from within. I think a lot of people think that you just live life and you create who you want to be. I believe you find who you truly are. All right? And that requires going deeper. That requires removing the distractions. Ask yourself, what is getting in the way of me seeing things clearly? Is it fear? Is it friends, family? Is it just these perceptions that we've held on to because we've been conditioned to believe, well, we can't do this, and we gotta do that, and all this different stuff? But if it doesn't align with who you are, then it's pointless to try to go in a direction that you don't belong in. So get into it, and I'm gonna say this last quick thing. For those of you who may struggle with hearing God or getting more in tune, I always suggest fasting. All right? Fasting is a great tool to gain more clarity. It's great physically. There's a lot of benefits physically with fasting. But spiritually, I've yet to meet someone who fasted and didn't gain some level of awareness or greater clarity in that process. And it doesn't have to automatically be food. You might be new to fasting. It could be fast from TV for a week, fast from music, social media. I do think that food is the ultimate fast, but start where you can and get that ball rolling. So now, I usually have certain topics that I will talk about, and I have some things I do want to discuss, but I want to make sure you guys are getting the information that you need. So I'm just going to let you guys randomly throw out topics you want me to cover. Anybody, just go ahead. Don't be scared. Setting goals. Anybody else? Starting a relationship. Anybody else? Y'all, the quietest crowd so far. Go ahead. Was it toxic relationships? Detaching from toxic relationships. Work-life balance. You know what? I have to start with work-life balance. I'm going to come back to you, but I got to start with work-life balance. Because I definitely think this is an area that a lot of us struggle. All right? And it's dear to my heart because I've struggled for a long time with that. So one, I think that we need to redefine what balance is. Sometimes we think that balance is trying to do all these different things at the current time and making space and time for all of it. But balance might be, for the next 6 months, you're only doing this thing. And then 6 months after that, you'll do that thing. And eventually, yes, you might be able to do a little bit of everything, but sometimes you need to focus your energy on the main objective for right now. And we get too distracted and pulled in all these different directions and wonder why we can't focus, why we're not achieving certain things. I remember working at this, after I graduated, I did work at this one place selling computers. And I was on the phone with a customer, and at the time I was doing the real estate investment, but I was still early in the process. And the customer was an older woman, but I could tell she was very successful. And somehow we got in a conversation, and I told her what was going on, that I'm at this job, I'm doing real estate investment. And she said, you will never see the full potential of your business if you're splitting your time between multiple things. And after that, I quit. I didn't care back then. I would just quit any job at random, all right? But, and I'm not saying it'll be quit tomorrow, all right? But what I am saying is, we have to understand that what is it that we need to accomplish right now? What needs to be the focus right now? Worry less about balance and more about what's next up in my list of tasks that need to be done. And understand that we will get to the rest of it, all right? Now, I also heard detaching from toxic relationships. So, how many people, by a show of hands, feel like you have been in a toxic relationship before? A vast majority of people. How many of y'all think y'all were the toxic one? Yeah, okay. Some of y'all are honest. All right, okay. Well, listen, so the unfortunate reality is that toxic relationships are very common. And I don't want to use the word normal, I will just use the word common. Because unfortunately, so many people have been hurt and have not healed from their past traumas. And they carry that into new relationships, into new situations, and they project those things onto you. Now, the first thing I need you to understand about a toxic relationship is that you cannot internalize what happened to you in that relationship. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, hurt people, all right? And some people will dispute it and say, well, I never hurt anybody and I'm hurt. That's not true. Because I'm sure you have walls up in your life that's hurting yourself. You have walls up that's detaching you from friends and family. You don't allow yourself to be fully vulnerable to someone who wants to love you and pour into you. You are hurting someone whether you realize it or not. And so when we get in these toxic relationships, these situations happen, these behaviors happen, and we find broken up, but you're struggling with completely breaking free. You have to remind yourself why you shouldn't be there. Why it wasn't working. What were the issues? Because here's the thing, I'm all for trying to make things work with people who want to work with you. That's right. But if you lay out the issues, if you discuss all the problems, and they're still unwilling to make adjustments and corrections, there's nothing to do there. You have to move forward. And people have to understand there's going to be a consequence. For some strange reason, we accept consequences in every aspect of our life, but we seem to just brush under the rug when it comes to relationships. You don't pay your mortgage, you're losing your house. You keep going to work late, you're going to get fired. Even God has stipulations and consequences for not following His way. So if someone doesn't show up the way that they need to in this relationship, they need to understand you will walk away from them. There's nothing unhealthy about that. I always say one of the worst positions to be in is for your partner to think that no matter what they do, you will never leave. Once they think that happens, it's human nature to start taking advantage and start to be a little more lackadaisical and not to value what you have the same because you feel like it's not going anywhere. So what they should understand is that as long as they're willing to do their part and put forth an effort, you will be there right by the side. Otherwise, you're gone. So that's kind of helped with the mindset of detaching from a toxic relationship. But I was going to speak about it later, but let's speak about it now. The main thing is, again, healing. And I'm a firm believer that when you do not heal, you are extremely likely to choose the wrong person to be with. Because you cannot handle being vulnerable with someone who you truly love. Many of you, and I'm not picking on the women, but I have to point out the women right now. Many of you women, after you've been, it's what I like to call the unhealthy love cycle of women. And what that cycle is that in your first experience, as long as there wasn't any other childhood trauma, a woman is her most loving in her first moment of falling in love and feeling like this is the guy for her. Wide open, pouring on into him. If you're in high school, you're writing his name on your notebook and you're telling everybody about him and all this stuff, right? But at that young of an age, the average man is not mature enough to handle that level of vulnerability, those feelings, that level of commitment. So inevitably, he hurts you. And now you have a moment where you say, I will never let this happen to me again. And now you either consciously or subconsciously choose men who you're not really into like that, but good enough to be with. You can maintain a level of emotional control with them. You feel like you have more value here. You might even pick a man who's not that attractive on purpose. Because in your head, he ain't cute enough to talk to me any kind of way. He ain't cute enough to cheat on me. He ain't cute enough to not value and respect me. Oh, no. He is lucky I am with him. And you know what happens in the majority of those situations? He still cheats on himself. But he's not cheating because he's a man. He's cheating because you chose the man knowing you could not pour into him the way that he needs. You will never be the woman that he needs, and he can never be the man that you need. So you set the stage for problems to happen. Whether it's him cheating, and sometimes, many times, the woman will cheat. And it's this ongoing cycle because, again, we're choosing people out of hurt rather than out of love. We're choosing out of fear, not faith. So we've got to flush out that negative energy, flush out that pain that's holding us back and causing us to make these bad decisions. So here's a quick exercise I always give to kind of get the ball rolling with the healing process. When you get a chance, later on this week or whatever, get a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper write down who hurt me. And then ask yourself the question, who hurt me? Now, every person who comes to mind, put them on the paper. It doesn't matter how long ago it happened. It doesn't matter if you think it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you think you moved past it. If they come to mind, there's some kind of significance there. And write a couple sentences of what they did to hurt you. This is how we start to get the hurt out in front of us. Because the reality is that many of you have been suppressing it for a very long time. And you would be shocked to find out who makes that list once you ask yourself those questions. Now, of course, there's more to the healing process, things like forgiveness, releasing how you feel through letters and all these different things. You can check that out in the book. I have the book outside of here, Love After Heartbreak. But understand that it's essential for you to go through the healing process. And again, not just for the sake of relationships, for the sake of your own peace and happiness. And for every area of your life to flourish. All right, so throw out some more topics real quick. Connection.
What's the timeline for healing? I know that very level is a new level, so they're not 100% like you arrive, so the process is always going and going. But how do you know yourself that you are totally free and you move on?
All right, that's a very good question I have to answer. So, one, I want to make clear, because some people believe that you're never fully healed, and that's a lie. You can fully heal. Granted, there will always be experiences in life that can hurt you again. But once you learn how to properly heal from everything else, nothing else will hurt you the same. You will be able to handle everything so much better. Now, when we talk about the timeline for healing, it's not really a timeline, it's about putting in the work. If you go through the steps, you got to do everything that's in that book, write all the letters, do the entire process. Just writing the letters by itself, you're going to feel a weight come off your shoulders. You're going to feel a lot better, a lot lighter in life, okay? Now, granted, even if you do the process, you may go through weeks of having moments where you go back to that negative place, that negative thought. And you just have to consciously practice reminding yourself, what's done is done. I'm moving forward. I'm not dwelling on those things. But when you've already come to peace about the situation, again, it gets easier and easier. And so for some people that might take weeks, might take months. I don't think it ever takes years for someone who actually does the process, all right? I just think that initially it's about doing all of it. Whenever I come across an individual who says, well, I still haven't fully healed yet, it's because they skipped a step. You see what I'm saying? They were afraid to maybe write the letter. They were afraid to face this specific issue. You know what I'm saying? They left that topic untouched. That was the reason why it's lingering. But if you do everything you're supposed to do, you're going to see a huge difference. All right, so I know you said connection. I'll get to connection a little bit later.
After being alone or single for so long, how do you embrace dating when you're used to being comfortable alone?
All right, I'm going to answer that, but remember I said topics, all right? But I got you. I'm going to get you, but I want this random general topics. But how do you get comfortable being alone after having been in a relationship for so long, you said? How do you get comfortable being in a relationship when you've been alone for so long? Okay. So the first thing is, are you with the right person in the relationship? Because it's a really hard adjustment if you're just trying to make it work with someone that you like but you're not really into, you don't really align with. So, for example, I'm someone that realizes I need space, all right? I cannot have someone up under me all the time. It will suffocate me. I need my alone time. If I get with an individual who requires a lot of time, it's going to make things very uncomfortable. The adjustment is going to be very difficult because I am dealing with someone I don't align with, all right? But if I got with a woman who respects that space, can move on her own and be good, then it's not going to be that hard to be used to now getting used to being in a relationship after being alone for so long. I think also it is giving yourself a little bit of a grace period because it is an adjustment to a certain extent, regardless. But just remind yourself, if you have deemed this person worth being with, then it's worth working through that process of being uncomfortable and you need to get used to this. So I think it's just being vocal and transparent with your partner about how this is difficult for you. What areas specifically are you struggling with? You know what I'm saying? Is it that you have to check in with somebody every now and then that's bothering you? Is it that you have to be mindful of when they come over your house and maybe they're a little messier than you, which again, might be an issue of, are you dealing with the right person? Now, I know that sounds crazy because there's plenty of people who are neat with messy people. But you have to ask yourself, does their issue bother me to the point that I can't show up 100% in this relationship? So if their level of messiness is acceptable to you and you're a neat freak, you're OCD, okay, cool. But if you know it's gonna drive you crazy to where now you're gonna have an attitude with them, you're gonna start resenting them, now you're gonna start talking to them disrespectfully, and it's gonna snowball into all these other issues, then don't force it. A lot of times it's the little things in relationships that get overlooked that turn into all the other big issues. When couples have come to me, they're coming to me about the issue on the surface right now, and not all the underlying things that have gone unaddressed that entire time. So be mindful of that and be honest about all the little things that bother you now, and see if they can be corrected. If not, again, you might be dealing with the wrong individual. All right, so topics. Attachment styles. So real quick, so let me say this. I'm gonna be very honest. I am not well educated enough on attachment styles. Only because, true story, well, one reason why. I started my master's in marriage and family therapy. After one semester, I said, hell no, this ain't for me. Right? I dropped out after a month. Now, reason being is because one, I felt like there was a lot of red tape involved, a lot of ethics codes. I didn't want to be bound to these things. I didn't want to be restricted in how I can communicate to individuals. And then that's the other reason why I'm not always hip on all the psychological terms and attachment styles and things of that nature, because I feel like sometimes we over-label and over-diagnose things. So for example, narcissism, all right? How many of y'all in here believe you've been with a narcissist before? Yeah, everybody in their damn mouth. I mean, that's what it is. Like, that's the new term. Everyone's a narcissist. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist, right? But sometimes it's just someone being selfish. Sometimes you're just dealing with someone who was never serious about you. Sometimes it's due to deeper trauma. It's not a personality disorder, but again, we get into over-diagnosing things. Now, what I will say about attachment styles, I'll give my version of attachment styles. Because to me, I just view it as levels of unhealthy attachment. All right? And there's various things that create that unhealthy attachment. So again, if you are someone who's very clingy. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes clinginess is not a bad thing. All right? We've demonized it like it's a problem. But understand that you're only viewed as clingy by the person who don't want you around that much. Think about that. Think about it. All right? Because, listen, how we perceive people's actions is dictated by how much we like them. All right? So, perfect example, I spoke to my elite VIP earlier, and I mentioned how, as a woman, you could get 10 DMs, right, from men, and they all say, hey, beautiful. And you're like, this is nonsense. Look at these garbage men. No creativity. What's wrong with them? Blah, blah, blah. Guy number 11 can say, hey, beautiful. But if you like him, and you think he's amazing, you're like, oh, that's so sweet. Oh my God, I'm flattered. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Hey. So the only thing that changed was how much you actually had interest in this individual. All right? So going back to something like being clingy, I think that we have to be honest with ourselves about the fact that some of us require a lot of quality time. We want to be up under our partner. There's nothing wrong with that because there are men who are that way and there are women who are that way. Those two people should be together. They would make each other very, very happy. All right? But to someone who's not like that, they're going to say you have problems. You have issues. You know what I'm saying? What's your attachment style? So go talk to a therapist, right? But it's not really a problem. So I think we have to be careful with that. Also, when it comes to other unhealthy attachments, again, fear of being alone, fear of starting over, pressure from family and friends. There's a lot of what they call single shaming going on, all right? But then on the flip side, there's a lot of, I don't know how we want to phrase it, but shaming you for wanting a relationship. And that's just as wrong. You have to be honest with yourself about what you desire and speak on it. Don't be afraid. If you want a relationship, cool. And understand, there's a difference between I need a man or I need a woman versus this is what I would like in my life. This is what would make me happier. Not that I can only find happiness here, but it will enhance things even more. But while I don't have it, I will still find my happiness within. I will still find happiness while I am single. But again, some other attachments may include babies. And I use babies because there's a lot of people who don't belong with that person, but they're trying to make it work for the kids. And I always say, listen, what the kids need is a positive environment. Two parents staying together, if you cannot create positive and loving environment for those children, you are defeating the purpose of staying together. Now, if you're going to work it out, great. But if you're going to make life miserable, those kids pick up on it. The vast majority of the clients I have sat down with grew up in households of dysfunction. Grew up in households where, yes, two people tried to keep it together, but they really didn't belong together. So we have to recognize that, yes, even a child can be an unhealthy attachment if you don't belong there. And the unfortunate reality I feel the need to mention, there are women and men who will, well, the woman will get pregnant on purpose, and there will men who will impregnate you on purpose. Just to keep you in their life. And this is why you'll notice some situations where the man doesn't even care about the child, he cares about access to you. So as long as he doesn't have access to you, he no longer wants to be a father. Because it was a game from the beginning. And you gotta recognize what you're getting yourselves into. So sex is another attachment. And you gotta be honest with yourself about what you can handle sexually and how far you can go with someone before you start feeling like you can't walk away so easily. Also, this is for women especially, simply making the investment of time and energy. Women struggle to walk away the more time they have given to an individual already, no matter how bad the situation is. And you've got to be able to be honest with yourself enough to say, one, I know where my line is, that if I cross it, it's going to be a problem. And two, it's better to walk away than to try to make something work with someone that you'll never make it work with. So we just have to start recognizing those things, and we can stop being in this negative cycle that we find ourselves in with these unhealthy attachments and these unhealthy relationships. All right, so here's the thing, right? Unfortunately, in today's dating world, a lot of people are not being themselves. A lot of people are trying to present their representative, hoping to get a favorable outcome. And we're all shooting ourselves in the foot, those who engage in that behavior. Because what you really need to be doing is finding out who you are, standing strong in that, and waiting for the person who embraces the real you. If you get with someone trying to put on an act and a show, you are going to end up being miserable later, even if you get that. Plenty of people have gotten exactly what they wanted. There have been men who went all in, spending all kinds of money to get a woman, only to finally wake up from the fog and realize this is a bunch of crap. And she's mistreating me, and she doesn't do anything for me. There's been women doing all this extra stuff, hoping they can make this man get to that place that you believe he can be. And he never gets there. Or he gets there, leaves you, and gets with somebody else. Because you were just a stepping stool in his life. He was never truly into you. But again, you were not coming with who you really were. Because if you're only pouring into that individual, then you're not being truthful about what you need in that relationship. So you're falsely representing what's going to be required of these individuals. And yes, there are plenty of people who will take advantage of that. So we've got to get comfortable with who we are and show up as that person. And then let the chips fall where they may. Now, here's a topic I do want to speak about, and it kind of goes with being authentic. So I'm a huge believer in masculine and feminine energy. All right, how many of you guys believe or understand the concept of masculine and feminine energy? Good amount of hands, but clearly I got to talk about it. So here's the thing. It's what I call the balance of relationship energy. I believe that for a relationship to be successful, you have to have a masculine and a feminine. All right? Even if you were to look at homosexual relationships, long-term ones, they recognize one person as the masculine and the other as the feminine. All right? So if homosexual relationships are getting that right, why are we confusing things? We seem to now reject this idea, and we fight so much for equality that we're losing balance. We're no longer complimenting each other. We're not playing to each other's strengths. And we're not walking in our true energy and our true power. So let's start with feminine energy. I believe that femininity is a woman's power. It is the greatest tool at your disposal. But the unfortunate reality is that a lot of women have become detached from their feminine energy. Some of you believe that when you were feminine, you got played, you got taken advantage of, you weren't appreciated. I will always say it wasn't your feminine energy, it was who you gave your energy to. And you can't think that because that person or those individuals didn't respect it, that means it's a bad thing. It's not. Because now you're no longer being yourself. Now you're walking in more masculine energy, and the reality is that for a lot of women, if not all, masculine energy is a defense mechanism. It's what you use because you're afraid if I don't come off this way, I won't be respected. If I don't come off this way, I'll be taken advantage of. If I don't come off this way, things won't get done. And so, and understand that we all have masculine and feminine energy within us, but we have to understand only one can be our dominant energy. And we tap into the other one when necessary. So with women, it's about learning how to tap into it and also learning how to exude it more. Because in exuding it, you will start to see better results. And again, not just in relationships, in your own personal lives. You will feel happier when you learn to walk more in your femininity. Now, healing is a big part of getting there. Because again, many of you have detached from it due to trauma that is unresolved. So you've got to get to the root of the issue. But I'm going to give you a couple quick tips to start just exuding it a little bit more, all right? Of course, there's a lot more we can talk about with this, but I want to give you something to get the ball rolling. So the first thing you can start doing to exude more feminine energy is smile. All right? Look at y'all. Just, right now, y'all mean and y'all looking all frown face. Listen, I know a lot of women don't like to be told to smile, but there's a study that shows women are found more attractive when they smile. All right? And so I can tell you as a man who travels all over, speaks in all these different cities, I come across all these wonderful, amazing women with resting bee face all day, every day. All right? And my thing is, if you want to have your resting bee face because you want to repel certain guys, cool. But you can't do that and then come to me and say, why is no one approaching me? Why am I not meeting any guys? Why is dating so hard? Because you look difficult. That's why. That's it. It's really that simple. You look too hard. No man wants to deal with that. And the ones who will look past it typically are the ones who only want you for selfish reasons. They want you sexually or they want your resources or both. All right? Now, I'm not saying walk around like a big old clown, smile 24/7, right? But at the very least, when you see someone you like, smile. When you're in environments where you want to meet people, smile. And for those of you who might say, well, I just don't smile, I don't even realize I'm not smiling. My response is, smiling comes easy when you're at peace from within. So if you are having a hard time smiling, there is something you're stressing about. There is something you're overthinking about. There is something weighing you down. So don't view it as, I just don't smile. View it as, why don't I? And let me get to the root of this issue. All right? Let's move on to the second quick tip you can use to exude more feminine energy, and that is the colors that you wear.
Wow.
So a lot of people don't realize colors emit energy. Literally, companies spend millions of dollars trying to study which color will make you click that, buy this, react this way. They send signals to your brain whether you realize it or not, and they can contribute to how people perceive you and receive you, all right? So one quick example, I had this client, and she was like ex-military. We were in Atlanta at the time I was doing house calls. And she's like, I'm having a hard time meeting men. I don't know what's going on. And she already came off a little rough. You know what I'm saying? She already came off a little strong. But okay, cool. I want to go see your closet. I said, let's go look at your closet. We open the closet. What do I see? Black, dark brown, navy blue, hump green, gray. It was a gloomy closet, all right? Just a gloomy closet. And I'm not saying you have to just wear nothing but colors, but just add a little diversity to your wardrobe. Try it out. And again, it's not just about how people will perceive you, it's about how you will feel. Try it. Go a whole week wearing nothing but dark colors. Be mindful of how you feel. Then go wear bright colors for a whole week. Be mindful of how you feel. You will see a difference. Ask the people around you, your family and friends, see if they see a difference. I guarantee you they will. 9 out of 10 times they will. So it makes a huge, huge difference. Now, I know some women are very sensitive about their blacks. Okay? Don't hold on to your blacks. Blacks hide things. They help with presentation. But you know what else hides things? The gym. If it bothers you so much that you have to hide it, why not resolve it? We do the same thing with our issues. We mask it rather than resolve it. So I just want to encourage you that if it bothers you that much, do something that's going to actually solve the problem and not hide the problem. Now, if you're cool and happy with it, do your thing. I'm not telling you how you have to live, how you have to look, but be real with yourself about what makes you happy or what makes you uncomfortable. And then address it. All right? So now let's move on to the men real quick. So again, same thing. A lot of the men, our power is in our masculine energy. And learning how to walk in that and exude that is going to take us very far. Again, not just with women, but in life in general. Men who are confident and show up a certain kind of way will find more success in every aspect of their life. So with that said, let me just get right to a couple quick tips that I'll give for the men to start exuding that more masculine energy. And the first thing is find something to conquer. Here's what I mean by that. As men, we are biologically wired to face and overcome things. We get dopamine hits from it. We feel proud, we feel good, it makes us feel confident. This is one of the reasons why there are a lot of men addicted to video games. Because video games gives that dopamine hit of beating something, conquering something, and it's the easiest way to get it for them. So that's why they cling onto it. But it doesn't help you in other aspects of your life. So I'm not demonizing the playing video games. What I am saying is make time to find something to conquer. It could be learning a new language. It could be building something. It could be achieving a degree. Whatever it is that's going to allow you to feel better and more confident, because as you exude that, you will walk more in your masculinity. It will help build you in that way. And then the second quick thing, which I just mentioned, but I'll mention it again, is finding your confidence. I have found that a lot of women can get by in life not being the most confident, but a man cannot. If a man lacks confidence, it's going to hurt him in every way possible. So as a man, if you are struggling with confidence, you have to ask yourself, why? What causes me to struggle? Now, if there's something that's out of your control, leave it alone. Do not dwell on things you cannot control. But if it's something that you can improve upon, attack that issue. That can be your first conquering thing, all right? and now resolve it. And when you do, again, you start to unleash that confidence that shows you in a different light, that allows you to show up and present yourself in a way that makes you a lot more desirable. Because at the end of the day, we want a certain balance in our relationships. The vast majority of men want a woman who can be feminine. The vast majority of women want a man who can be masculine. We have to start embracing that and respecting those differences and understand we don't have to be like each other because we're not like each other. All right? And when we push that narrative, we cause all kinds of confusion. One thing I have to clear up that has been confusion that has been created that I feel the need to address is sexually. All right? So there's a lot of people who will say, well, let me ask the crowd first. How many of you feel like women are just as sexual as men? Be honest. All right, I'm about to school y'all in a second. Get ready. So here's the thing. A woman can be as sexual as a man. Okay? So there are plenty of women out there, high libido, high sexual energy, just like a man. Definitely. But on average, women are not as sexual as men. And the proof of that is simply biological. All right? Testosterone is the key hormone that drives libido. Men naturally have more testosterone than women. Any woman who starts to work out can tell you she starts to feel hornier after working out consistently. Why? Because the working out is driving up her testosterone. All right? If you took any woman in here and pumped her with testosterone injections, libido would skyrocket. You take any man and pump him with estrogen injections, his libido would drop. That tells you biologically we're already very different. Also, what we have to understand, the reason why I want to clear up this confusion is because the big difference between a lot of men and women is that women, for the most part, are really drawn to intimacy, not sex. It doesn't mean you don't value sex, it doesn't mean you don't want it. But if there was door number one, hugs, kisses, emotional talking, all that stuff, right? And then door number two, straight animal sex. Just that's it. Right? Okay? The majority of women are choosing door number one. The majority of men are choosing door number two. That's how we are wired. All right? And we have to understand that difference because what's happening is if you tell a man women are just like us, then he doesn't understand your need for foreplay. He doesn't understand your need for mental stimulation. He doesn't understand that if you are mentally exhausted, you cannot show up sexually the way that he wants you to. Because you're not like us. And we don't need those things. World War III could be going on right now, and we still want to get it in. We don't care. All right? We're not distracted by all that. So we've got to accept our differences so that we can create more harmony in relationships. And we've got to be willing to be honest about those things. I think we're not being transparent enough, and we're not embracing and respecting the differences that we have. Again, when your man shows such a high need for intimacy, don't view him as some out-of-control child that, just can't handle it. No. He is, the healthier the man, the harder it will be. Understand that. The healthier the man, the harder it will be. When you guys think that just simply men getting older is what drops their libido, no, it's men's testosterone dropping. That tends to happen while they get older. But if a man is older and raises his testosterone, that libido is going right back to when he was 20-something years old. All right? It's going to change everything. So we've got to respect that because I've seen so many relationships fail due to sexual disconnect, due to sexual misunderstanding. And we've got to be more clear and transparent about these things if we want to make it better for everybody. All right? So go ahead and throw the topic out there. Dealing with alpha females. How many of y'all believe you're an alpha female? Alright, so for those of you who don't know, you know what? I'm gonna let one of the alpha females define it. Whoever believes she's an alpha female, I welcome you to give your definition of it, please. Okay, go ahead.
Just from being single, you learn to be independent and kind of just make sure things are taken care of. You just know how to lead the way for those around you as well, family, siblings. So naturally in a relationship, that can kind of, be present.
Okay.
So just kind of be mindful to, like you say, be intentional about shifting that.
Yeah, so essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, alpha female, someone who can take charge, handle things on her own, knows how to take initiative and be assertive, take the lead when necessary. Okay. So his question is how to deal with that. Okay. So first, I'm going to answer this from two angles. I'm going to answer this from the man's angle and from the woman's angle. All right. So as a man, how do you deal with an alpha woman? Now I'm going to tell y'all personally, I just won't deal with them at all. Alright? And what I mean by that is, I will explain what I believe needs to be the structure in this relationship for this to work. I need her to be able to trust me in this. I'm a firm believer, and some of y'all may disagree. I believe in the man being the lead of the relationship. Alright? But I want you guys to understand, I don't believe that simply because he's a man or the woman's incapable or anything like that. I believe that because when you examine relationships over the long term, you see that when the woman has to lead or share leadership, she becomes worn down by this relationship. All right? In the vast majority of cases, if they try to do a 50-50 thing, co-leadership, at some point what happens is there will be a moment where they both feel strongly about how things should be done. And in that moment, since there's no agreed upon final decision maker, so to speak, both are trying to get their point across. And you know who will probably win that argument? The woman. Because y'all will fight to the damn death. Y'all will kick, y'all will scream, and if he doesn't do what you like, you will make his life hell for not doing what you wanted. And God forbid, let his choice be the wrong choice, and he will never hear the end of it, okay? So, what happens now is, in most cases, especially when the man loves the woman, he tends to back down. He says, okay, we'll do it your way. At some point, he becomes conditioned to letting you make a decision. So now, while you really want that decision, you're cool. But there's going to come a point where you're overburdened, you're exhausted, you don't want to be the one to make this decision. It's like, yo, you go figure it out. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not used to having to make that decision for the both of you. Making decisions is something that you have to practice, become confident in. And it's not just making a decision, it's dealing with the aftermath. Because here's the other thing that I've noticed, and this is the other reason why I think it preserves a woman more to allow the man to lead. If a woman makes a decision and it ends up being the wrong decision, you guys have a greater tendency to let it linger in your head, to dwell on it, to beat yourselves up. Women are in their minds 24/7. Whereas a man can mess up and we forget about it the next day. And y'all are looking at us like we're crazy because like, how could you just be over it already? But like, it's done. Let's move on. Which is actually more beneficial for decision making because you can't dwell on things. You have to learn from it, move forward. But for a woman, if there's any kind of emotional attachment to that moment, she will struggle more. So again, that starts to break down her energy in every other aspect. Now she starts to maybe not be in the mood. Maybe now she starts to resent the husband because she feels like you put me in this position to have to make this decision. That wasn't even right. If I could have trusted you, I could have let you make the decision. But part of the reason why you haven't built the trust is because you've been fighting to take the lead the whole time. So getting back to how the man has to deal with it, you have to establish how you want this relationship to go. Either she's going to embrace that or she's not. But again, you express that with the understanding that you're trying to lead with love. You're not trying to lead to be her dictator, to run her. You know what I'm saying? You will always consider how she feels. You have to talk to your partner, hear her out, but she has to, and listen, even the man having the final decision doesn't mean the woman doesn't get her way. And here's the beautiful thing. If you know how to use your feminine energy, you will get your way. Alright? Trust and believe. Alright? Put that sweet stuff on him, he's gonna do what you want. But he will at least feel like he did it rather than you just telling him what to do. Alright? So understand that the woman has the power to influence. Focus on your ability to influence in a positive and loving manner, not to dictate, run, or control things. You're not happy in that role. It only feels comfortable and safe temporarily, but over time it will break you down. So that's what I would say. Well, I kind of answer both sides. So as a man, you got to establish those things, have that discussion. But if she's not with it, that's fine, because some women aren't going to be with it. All right. And for the woman, you have to understand I understand you had to lead on your own while you were single, or maybe you were with a different guy who did not know how to take charge and be assertive, but you cannot project that onto every man you're with. You have to give them the opportunity to show you, will they respect and honor you in this role? Because there are some people who would argue, well, you can't give someone that much power, they'll abuse it. Well, how do you expose a thief? By hiding your money, or by leaving your money out and watching to see if they're going to take it or not?
Leave it out.
You can't expose his ability to love and lead you if you don't allow him to try. So give him the opportunity, and if he takes advantage, then you know he's not for you. Throw another one out there. All right, so we heard connection twice, so let's get to connection. All right. And I'll answer astrology after connection. All right, slow down, all right? Well, I'm trying to get to goals too. All right, so first connection. All right, so to me, there's three things to consider: compatibility, chemistry, connection. All right, so we'll get to connection after I break down the first two. Compatibility. So here's the interesting thing. I've always said compatibility is at the bottom of the list. Because to me, compatibility is a logical approach to determining who should fit together. It's like when they come from these backgrounds, they should get along. They have these types of interests, they should get along. So you'll go on a dating site that matches you by compatibility, but yet you don't get along with that person. It doesn't actually work out. So to me, compatibility doesn't tell the whole story. However, I was recently on a show and I mentioned how before I went on the show, for some reason, I looked at the definition of compatibility. And the actual definition is the ability to coexist in harmony. So by that definition, we do need compatibility. It's very important, but it's about how you perceive compatibility, all right? So it's about, can we live in harmony together, not what should make sense on paper together, all right? Now we move on to chemistry. Chemistry, of course, is an important ingredient in every relationship. However, chemistry is a very fluid thing. It can be created, it can be destroyed. Meaning, think about like a basketball team. You can put players together, they practice long enough, they can build chemistry. You can have team building exercises in corporate America. And then, the problem is if someone in that team does something that betrays the trust, chemistry is gone. So chemistry comes and goes very easily, all right? Not to mention that chemistry is a lot more common. Meaning, if you are a friendly person who gets along with people, you damn near got chemistry with everybody, all right? Like everyone likes you. That's just normal. But you can't be with every person you get along with. So chemistry is not the deciding factor that says, I should move forward with this individual. But it is an ingredient that we need. Which brings me to connection. And connection to me is the ultimate. It is the deciding factor. To me, it is your spirit recognizing its match. All right? It cannot be created, it cannot be destroyed. It's either there or it's not. You have people who have experienced connection, stop talking, 10 years later they reunite, it's like they never stopped talking. They flow with each other. It's natural, it's not forced. You can be yourselves with each other. The more you reveal about yourself, the more they love you. Not the more they pull away. All right? That is connection, because the reality is that many people, the reason why you're not being your true self is because deep inside you know your partner won't like it. So you hide it hoping not to rock the boat. But if you have to hide who you are, then you are with the wrong person. And there is no way you can sustain not being your true self. Your true self will rise at some point. And when it does, all hell will break loose if you are in the wrong relationship. Plain and simple. So connection to me is that deeper thing that we have to pay more attention to. Also, if you were to survey people and ask them, how many times have you experienced a deep, genuine connection? The average person will tell you one time. Sometimes you'll hear two. I ain't never heard three. Never. It is extremely rare if that even is possible. Okay? So again, whereas chemistry, you can have with a bunch of people. Compatibility, you can have with a bunch of people. When we look at it as far as on a logical sense, who should match together. But connection is rare. And that's why to me, it's where we should place our focus when we're trying to determine who we should move forward with. All right? Now, I think what was before ghost? wrap things up, I will be taking pictures and signing those who bought the book right here. They'll direct all of that. Again, I really want you guys to take a lot of this information very seriously. We get a lot of laughs, but this stuff is real.
This is Mr. Triple H himself, aka His Healthy Habits. And just remember, we're all in this together and you're not alone. We're all working on becoming the next best version of ourselves. Let's get it.